Have you ever noticed how some people manage to shift an entire room's energy without uttering a single word? They don't need to raise their voices, they don't beg for attention, they simply retreat, and like magic, everything tilts. The atmosphere tenses, people start wondering, reaching out, feeling uneasy. Now picture yourself doing the same. Imagine if, instead of instantly reacting, you paused. If, instead of answering every poke, you chose stillness. What do you think would happen? Here's the truth. When you stop offering yourself so freely, emotionally, physically, mentally, you shatter the scripts that others have been using to control you. The ones who relied on your predictable reactions, your eagerness to please, suddenly find themselves lost. Because the day you pull away is the day they realize they never really knew you at all. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Think about that for a second. When you step back and become a little harder to reach, who panics? Who scrambles for your attention? Who pushes your buttons just to get you to react? Their behavior unmasks them. And more importantly, it shows you just how much of your energy you've been giving away without even noticing. You've been offering pieces of yourself to maintain peace, to hold on to people who were never truly yours. And every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you react without thinking, you're bleeding energy. And what's left at the end of the day? Exhaustion, resentment, a deep, aching emptiness you can't quite name. Here's why. Because you've been too accessible to people who don't deserve even a second of your silence. This isn't about abandoning the world, it's about finally choosing yourself. It's about stepping into what Jung called individuation, the path of becoming truly whole. And that path begins when you realize that sometimes silence speaks louder than any speech. That conscious withdrawal isn't weakness, it's pure, unfiltered strength. So let me ask you directly, soul to soul, how long will you let yourself be a marionette of other people's emotions? How long will you dance every time someone tugs at your insecurities? Maybe it's time to cut the strings, to step back, to become a mystery they can no longer predict. Because the moment you stop being easily available, the entire game changes. You've been trained since childhood to be there for others, to answer quickly, to be agreeable, to say yes, even when your heart screamed no. You were taught that your value is tied to how much you give. But here's something few dare to tell you plainly. This endless availability isn't generosity. It's self-sabotage. It's a gilded cage you've locked yourself inside. And as long as you believe that your worth is measured by your accessibility, you will be used up, discarded, and forgotten the moment your usefulness runs dry. Why? Because predictability turns you into a tool, not a person. People treat you like an emotional vending machine. Press a button, get what they want, and walk away. And all the while, you believe that being available will guarantee someone will be available for you. But life doesn't play by those rules. Not now, not ever. Carl Jung spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to win approval, love, recognition. And it's exactly this mask that tricks you into being constantly available. You smile and say you're fine while you're crumbling inside. You reply to messages the second they arrive, even when your soul is begging for rest. You explain, you justify, you defend yourself as if you owe the world an apology simply for existing. But here's the hard truth. The more you make yourself a character in everyone else's story, the more you vanish from your own. Being endlessly available is not kindness, it's a form of self-betrayal dressed up as virtue. It's a desperate attempt to secure love, to avoid rejection, to micromanage the perception others have of you. But that illusion of control comes at a steep cost. It costs you your peace, It bleeds your life force drop by drop, as if you were an infinite well. And you're not. People who demand your constant availability don't actually want you. They want what you give them: attention, comfort, validation, distraction. And when you shift, when you finally draw a line, when you stop being endlessly reactive, these same people will call you selfish, cold, distant. It's not because you became worse, it's because you stopped serving their needs. And here's the brutal reality: the more available you make yourself, the less people respect you. What is overly abundant becomes disposable. Nobody treasures what they didn't have to earn. Nobody honors what's handed to them without a cost. So stop and reflect. Who has truly earned your time? Who has shown they deserve your presence, your ear, your energy? Better yet, who deserves the sacredness of your absence? But before you answer, there's a crucial layer we need to uncover. Why are we so quick to react? Why do we rush to please, to explain, to defend ourselves without even thinking? The answer is hidden in what Jung called psychic energy. And this is exactly what we'll dive into next, because your energy is your greatest currency. And if you don't learn how to guard it, someone else will find a way to use it against you. If this message is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button and join the journey. Thanks for being here and for choosing yourself. Jung didn't see the mind as a machine spitting out reactions without consequence. To him, the psyche is an energy system, and every thought, every feeling, every action drains part of that finite reserve. So the real question is, are you choosing where your energy flows, or are you letting the world siphon it away at will? Every time you fire back at a pointless criticism, every time you scramble to justify yourself to someone who doesn't deserve the explanation, every time you pour energy into arguments, into proving your worth to those who don't see it, you are hemorrhaging your psychic power, and Jung made it clear. What you resist persists. The more you react, the deeper you entangle yourself. People who live in a constant state of emotional exhaustion aren't weak, they're simply misaligned. They have forgotten how to guard their energy, and exhaustion breeds vulnerability. When you're drained, you're easy prey. Manipulators, users, emotional vampires, they can smell it. They see that you don't know how to protect your energy, that you react without thinking, that you live in service of external validation. And they will exploit that. A healthy psyche, Jung said, is one that contains its energy. It's the mind that knows how to say no without self-hatred, how to stay silent without feeling like a coward, how to pause and observe before choosing to act. True strength isn't in reacting to every trigger. True strength is the power to choose your battles, your words, your silences, and that mastery begins the moment you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses before they control you. How many nights have you spent replaying conversations that didn't end the way you wanted? How many hours have you wasted obsessing over words left unsaid or trying to make sense of why someone mistreated you? That's psychic energy leaking away with no return. You're keeping old ghosts alive, feeding dead situations, simply because you can't stop reacting. Your psychic energy is like a fortress. When you guard it, it becomes presence. You walk into a room, and without saying a word, people feel it. They respect it. But when you let it bleed away through every minor trigger, you become invisible, scattered, fragile. And the world, harsh as it is, has little mercy for those who hand away their power so easily. So begin to notice your own fault lines. What makes you lose yourself? What sparks an instant, uncontrollable reaction? Those are the fractures where your energy seeps out. And that's where the real work lies. Not to become numb, not to shut down your heart, but to become precise, sovereign, to govern yourself. And this brings us to one of Jung's most unsettling insights. The moment you conserve your psychic energy, you shatter the illusions others project onto you. And that causes discomfort, because now you're walking into the murky waters of silent manipulation. You think you're in control. You believe your emotions are deliberate choices, but the truth is darker than that. Most of your reactions are old scripts written long ago, running without you even knowing. And those who recognize this, opportunists, manipulators, don't need to scream or demand. They simply press the right emotional buttons, the ones you left exposed, and watch you dance. Jung called it projection, the unconscious act of throwing one's own flaws, fears, and unmet needs onto someone else. But here's the hidden layer. While others project onto you, by staying emotionally wide open, allow yourself to become a blank screen for their illusions. Think about that friend who only calls when their life is falling apart. That partner who expects you to always fix things. That person who praises you just enough to keep you useful. None of it is random. They are not connecting with the real you. They're interacting with the character you agreed to become. And why? Do you agree? Because deep down you fear rejection. You fear not being loved. You fear being left behind. The most effective form of manipulation doesn't come through screaming matches or grand ultimatums. It thrives in the silent corridors of guilt, when you feel you owe it to someone to stay, when you believe you must be available, must fix, must understand, even if it chips away at your soul. Here's the crux. A skilled manipulator doesn't need to force you into anything. They just need you to keep reacting predictably. But when you stop playing along, when you start saying no without apology, when you answer with stillness instead of explanations, when you retreat instead of justifying, the entire illusion collapses. The mask they had placed over you falls apart, and for the first time, they are forced to see the real you. And this unsettles people, because suddenly they no longer know who they're dealing with. Worse still, they're forced to confront themselves, and many are not ready for that reckoning. Your silence, your unavailability becomes a threat, because it exposes the void they've been desperately trying to ignore. The stillness you offer shines a brutal light on the internal chaos they've spent a lifetime trying to drown out. And so the backlash comes, the accusations, the emotional theatrics, the criticism. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you dared to stop being the mirror that made them feel whole. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, you force the shadow of the other to the surface. And for those who have built their lives on avoiding their own darkness, this is intolerable. But now the question shifts to you. Are you willing to face the cost of protecting your energy? Are you prepared to be misunderstood, rejected, even vilified for refusing to play your old part? Because it's exactly in that silence, uncomfortable, raw, heavy, that a new power begins to rise. Now let's talk about what truly happens when you stop reacting, when you embrace the silence instead of fighting it. Because it's inside that silence that something extraordinary is born, the beginning of a new kind of power. We live in a world addicted to noise. Everyone is desperate to be heard, to clap back, to win arguments that don't matter, to defend opinions they barely understand, trading peace for validation. But there is a power that almost no one knows how to wield, the ruthless, deliberate power of silence. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of resignation, but the silence of someone who sees clearly and chooses presence over reaction. Jung understood, silence isn't emptiness, it's a crucible where real transformation happens. When you stop reacting, you start seeing. Patterns reveal themselves, cycles of manipulation, loops of self-betrayal, invisible chains that you could never notice when you were busy trying to win. Silence births clarity, and clarity terrifies those who once depended on your confusion. Have you ever noticed how some people spiral when you don't text back immediately? When you don't explain, don't justify, don't engage, it's not because they miss you, it's because your silence strips away their ability to control the narrative. As long as you're talking, you're still playing their game. But when you go silent, you change the entire board. You shake the very ground they thought was theirs. True silence isn't the absence of words. It's dominion over your own energy. It's refusing to be dragged into emotional battlegrounds that only bleed you dry. It's choosing sovereignty over reaction. Jung taught that individuation, becoming who you were truly meant to be, requires stepping back, requires space, requires silence, because only in silence can you finally hear your own voice, not the world's demands screaming over it. Come, but don't be naive. Silence comes with a cost. It will peel away the people who only loved the role you played, not the soul you are. It will confuse, anger, and alienate those who only saw their reflection when they looked at you. You will be called distant, arrogant, cold, and you will realize it's the price of freedom. But remember this, all that backlash, all that noise, they're just reactions from people who were never interested in your depth, only in your usefulness. And here's the hard truth. As you evolve, you naturally become more selective with your words. You realize that every sentence you speak is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves a piece of your truth. Sometimes silence isn't a withdrawal. It's a declaration of sovereignty. It's the language of those who have nothing left to prove. Silence makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to sit with themselves, to hear their own chaos without the distraction of your energy soothing them. And that discomfort says more about them than any defense you could ever mount. You don't need to explain your absence. It speaks louder than any justification could. And those who are rattled by it are the ones who leaned on your imbalance to stay standing. But the most powerful silence isn't the one that unsettles others. It's the one that rebuilds you from the inside out. It's the silence that cuts through the noise of the world and plugs you back into your own soul. It's in this sacred space, far away from the pull of external demands, that you start to reclaim your energy, your essence. And this leads to the next frontier. It's not enough to simply cut out the noise. You must relearn how to command your energy, where it flows, where it anchors, and most critically, where it must never be wasted again. It's time to be ruthless in protecting your own soul, because knowing all this means nothing if, in practice, you still say yes when you mean no. If you still reply to draining messages, if you keep fueling dead conversations and maintaining relationships that should have ended long ago. Awareness without action is just another lie you tell yourself. Real change starts when you make the decision, unshakable, unapologetic, to become selective. And that demands emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about coldness, arrogance, or apathy. It's about reclaiming your right to be inaccessible to anyone, anytime, for any reason that doesn't serve your peace. And it starts with small, radical acts. Not answering immediately, breathing before you react, walking away before you're dragged into drama, turning your phone off without second thoughts, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, saying I'm choosing myself. But here's the crucial truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your silence. You don't have to justify your absence. You owe loyalty to only one person, yourself. And that, for many, is unforgivable, because when you stop explaining, you take away their ability to trap you in a role, the eternally available, endlessly understanding, always accessible version of yourself they depended on. Jung knew that every true journey of individuation passes through a phase of solitude, but not a barren, depressing isolation, a sacred solitude, a time when you step away from the noise, from the projections, from the expectations, and finally hear your own voice without interruption. A time when you rebuild who you are, not from the scraps others threw at you, but from the core of your being. Want a powerful way to measure your evolution? Watch who drifts away as you become quieter. Watch who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of changing when you finally protect your peace. These are not signs you're doing something wrong. They are confirmation that you are finally breaking free. Becoming unavailable feels foreign at first. You'll battle guilt. You'll wonder if you're becoming selfish. You'll hear whispers that you're too harsh. But this is the necessary pain of transformation. You spent a lifetime being trained to prioritize others over yourself. Of course, change feels uncomfortable, not just for you, but for everyone who fed off the old, compliant version of you. Conscious unavailability is not cruelty. It's the bedrock of true self-ownership. When you say no to the world, you say yes to your own soul. When you walk away from toxic spaces, you declare that your inner peace is worth more than counterfeit relationships. And when you stop explaining yourself, you force the world to finally respect you, even if only a few will truly understand. Not everyone is equipped to handle this version of you. Because your emotional absence unmasks the wounds they've worked so hard to bury, it exposes how much their stability relied on your instability, and that's when the rupture happens. With the rupture comes pain, comes loneliness, comes the terrifying feeling that you're losing something important, when in truth, you're finally setting yourself free. Now I want to hear from you. Are you ready to be misunderstood, pushed away, even criticized, just to stand true to yourself? Are you ready to pay the real price of inner freedom? If this message resonated with you, drop a comment saying, I choose myself. Let's see how many here are truly ready to walk this path. And don't stop here. The next video is crucial. It's more important than you think.